Anywho, let's get into some objections training. All right, I'm really excited about this training because the thing about objections is there's a lot of misconceptions around them. And you're going to be hearing a lot of the same objections over and over. And it's never what people say on the surface that is actually the reason that they're thinking, oh no, I can't do this. If you remember the three, I'll get this off the screen so as not to distract from this. If you remember the 3 rules of sales, the 3 rules of sales are: 1, always, always, always do what's in the client's best interest. That's your only responsibility. Second rule of sales is that what's in your client's best interest is almost always outside of their comfort zone. That brings us to our third rule of sales, which is your client is always going to fight like hell to stay in their comfort zone. So if you know that what you're offering is what your client needs, it's your job to get them out of their comfort zone. And objections are usually a way that your client is going to go about staying inside their comfort zone. So it goes back to that question that I posed to you last week on the sales training, which is, who is enrolling who? Are you enrolling them in coaching, or are they enrolling you in their objections and their story about why it's not the right time, why they can't afford it, all of those different things? So when it comes to actually closing a client, we only want to close people who are the right fit for our program. But when it comes to actually closing a client, it's all about the PB balance. I'm not talking about peanut butter. I'm not talking about how much peanut butter is in their macros. I'm talking about pain and belief. You need to have the right balance between pain and belief in order to close a sale. And over the course of going through the sales script, it is designed to move you to the point where you are getting the client to understand their pain, but you're not digging them so deep into the pain that they don't believe they can get out. You're also trying to get them as deep into their vision for themselves as possible and to get excited about it, but for them not to have it seem so far off that they could never get there. When that pain and that belief is in balance, you close the sale. So here's the role of pain and PB balance. If a prospect isn't in pain, they won't value your offer. So if somebody comes to you and you're asking them, hey, Matt, what's your goal? Where do you want to be in 6 months? Matt says, I'd like to lose 10 pounds. Okay, cool. 10 pounds in 6 months, that's no big deal. You want to dig them a little bit deeper. You want to ask them, why do you want to lose 10 pounds? Why is that important? Why not just stay here? And they might tell you something like, oh, well, you know, when I was 10 pounds ago, I just felt better. And then that's where you ask the most important question in sales. What do you mean? What do you mean you felt better? And that's where you start digging and digging. And eventually you're going to realize that there's a much deeper reason that they want to lose 10 pounds. And you've got to get to that. If you don't get to that, if their pain is really low, oh, you know, yeah, Matt, I just saw that my friend was doing nutrition coaching and I thought it'd be cool to count my macros, and I could use a little support with it because I downloaded a free guide and I'm doing it already, but I think I could just use a little expert help. That's not someone in pain. That's someone with a little bit of curiosity. That person's not in pain, so you have to dig. That's a person where it's like this, their pain's low, but because they've already been doing it, their belief is high. Their belief that they can do it is high. And so when you are saying, hey, Matt, yeah, you make your offer, you tell them it's $500 per month, 6-month commitment, that's when you know they're going to be like, whoa, I'm not in $3,000 worth of pain over the next 6 months. I'm not even in 6 months of effort worth of pain. Heck no. I'm just going to keep going this on my own. So that's the role of pain and PV balance. Really important to understand. That's why in the sales script, we want to dig into the pain. But if you dig them so deep into the pain that they feel like they can't get out of it, that's where we look at the role of belief. So when you get objections, often because the prospect doesn't believe in one of 2 things. One being they don't believe that you can help them get there. So that's what we'd call a lack of belief in the product. So something over the course of the sales call, maybe it was your pitch, maybe it was your tonality, maybe it's the energy that you brought to the call. You didn't seem sure about yourself and you projected that and they could pick up on it. Maybe that's why they don't believe in you or your product. The other thing is that they don't believe that they can achieve their vision. They have a lack of belief in themselves, and that might come from being in so much pain, being like, oh my God, Matt, I've tried everything. I did Weight Watchers and I lost 30 pounds, but I gained back 40. And I did keto and I lost 20 pounds, but I gained back 50. And I'm way worse than I ever was when I started. I just can't figure it out. I've worked with coaches. I've done this program and that program. And I just want to lose this weight so that I can actually be attractive to my husband again. They're so deep in the pain and they've tried so many things and failed so much. So because their pain is so high and they've tried things in the past, their belief in themselves is really low. They've paid people to help them fix their problem in the past, yet they're still in this predicament. And so this is a situation where their pain is super high, their belief is super low. They might be coming to you like, I'd just like to lose 10 pounds and keep it off. And if that's the case, then okay, that's good. We're getting somewhere. You know, I just want to lose 10 pounds and keep it off. At least now that's something that's believable. But maybe they want to lose 50 pounds, but they've struggled. They've lost and gained and lost and gained, and they want to keep it off. And so their belief in themselves is really low. That person might not believe that they can actually do it. So the only way that they'll believe that they can actually do it is if you can start to bridge the gap. And that's where that bridging the gap and establishing, you know, what is that gap comes from in the sales script. So when you're asking them, all right, so why do you think you failed in the past? Why do you think you haven't gotten there? And that needs to direct, if you're going to make this person an offer, you've got to get them to believe. You got to get them a vision that's a strong vision. It's just far enough out. It's one that's going to solve their pain. And it's a vision that they think they can actually achieve. So you've got to get them to that place where they've got this optimal PV balance, but then you also have to use your product and position your product as a way to bring their belief up. That they've got this pain, they've got this goal, they want to get there. They don't have belief in themselves, but you become the one that tips the scales. And so this is why a balance equals a close. When they're in enough pain that they value your services. And when you position and you frame the value of your program, they're in enough pain to think that's valuable. I am definitely in $3,000 worth of pain. But then you also position your coaching in a way that creates belief. So if you position your coaching in a way that it looks like everything else they've tried at and failed at, then what are they going to think? They're going to think, oh, this is just another thing I'm going to try and fail. You have to position it differently. So that's really, really important. The other thing with the belief is that all throughout the course of the call, the tonality of your voice, your ability to lead them, all of those things, your questioning, your line of questioning, actually reflecting back what you're hearing. That might be the first time that they've ever experienced that. All of those things are going to bolster their belief in you. But the most important thing when it comes to their belief in you is your belief in you. If you don't believe in you, if you don't believe that your program is worth $3,000 for 6 months, if you don't believe and you're not sold that 6 months is the minimum commitment, if you don't believe that you can get your clients there, you're going to project that and they're going to pick up on it. So then that would tip the scales and you're not going to close. So that's really important, worth repeating. Their belief comes from your belief. Are you sold? So let's dive into some common objections. Before we get to the objections, the 4 most important words in sales are, what do you mean? What do you mean? If somebody brings up an objection, you ask, what do you mean? Part of this comes from the fact that on a sales call, you need to be a leader. We are in a leadership role. And so if somebody says something, asks a question, whatever, we the person asking the questions, the person bringing up those objections, they become the leader. So what do you mean? This not only puts you back in a role of leadership position, but this is important. You may have already read this on the slide, but we don't handle objections. It's not something that we do. We don't handle objections. We need to hear them and seek to understand them. And what do you mean allows you to hear what they're actually saying instead of guessing what they're saying. Allows you to understand the objection. And then from there, you're going to work through that objection with the prospect, with a potential client. You're not handling it. You're helping them work through it. Because going back to the 3 rules of sales, what's rule number 1? Rule number 1 is you're always doing what's in the client's best interest. So if you're going through their objections, maybe they're just not right for your program right now. Maybe they are. If they are, you've got to get them out of their comfort zone. So 4 most common objections, there's 3 on there. Ha ha ha. Money is 1, spouse is 1, and time is actually 2. Time really comes down to it's not the right time, or I don't know if I have the time. Those are usually the ones that you're going to find. So the money objection, you might hear something like, oh, that's too expensive. Or, whoa, wow, I wasn't expecting that. So why are you hearing this objection? It's important to understand why you're getting these objections in order to actually work through them. So one of the reasons why is you didn't dig deep enough into the pain. It goes back to the PB balance. Of course, if you're offering something for $3,000 over 6 months, and if you haven't got them to see $3,000 worth of pain, then they're not going to want to pay $3,000. It's just the way it works. Now, you might not have displayed the opportunity cost, and that goes back to the pain. So what's the pain of staying the same? One of the best questions that you can ask in your sales script, if you feel comfortable with it, is if someone comes to you and says, I want to lose 30 pounds, at some point you just ask them, okay, cool, you want to lose 30 pounds, especially if you're not getting down to the deep why, then you can ask them, all right, well, why not just stay where you're at? You know, it doesn't sound like you really want to change too much, so why not stay where you're at? What does that mean if you stay 30 pounds overweight? And that's where you're going to start to see the opportunity cost. Opportunity cost the way they feel. The other reason you're going to get a money objection is you didn't ask enough why questions to get to the true motivation. And that question that I just posed to you, that why not just stay the same? That's a good why question to get to the true motivation if you're really struggling to get there. And the other reason you're going to get that's too expensive is if you offered your program to someone who you shouldn't have offered it to, someone who's not ready to get started, someone who you couldn't get to the pain, someone giving you one-word answers, someone whose goal is not congruent with service that you offer, of course, what you tell them is going to be too expensive if you offered to the wrong person. So what do you do when someone says that's too expensive? First, you shut up. I should have put that on the slide, but I didn't. First, you shut up. Someone might say, oh, that's too expensive. And you just keep shutting up. And then they might work through it in their head. They might be like, oh, you know, I guess this is something that I want to do. So if this, do you take credit cards? Do you have payment plans? And then you might actually get to potential solution. But if they just say that's too expensive and they don't work it out in their own heads, if you've shut up for an adequate time and you're not getting anywhere, you ask, what do you mean? What do you mean that's too expensive? So then you might get some of these responses. I can't cover, of course, all the different responses you might get, but one of them might be, oh, that's more than Matt, your competitor that I worked with in the past is charging. He was only charging $100 per month. And the easy response to that is, okay, you worked with this person in the past. Why are we on this call then? If it worked. If it works, why didn't you just start back up with them? And it's okay to be that stern and that forward with it. Another response you might get is, I can't afford that. And so again, this goes back to this one. You didn't display the opportunity cost. You didn't get to their true motivation. Your PB scale is out of balance. Oops. Where did we go? There we go. You need to reflect back that opportunity cost if you have found it of staying the same. Say, I can't afford that. Okay, cool. So then why not, are you willing to just stay the same? You need to reflect that back to them, and that's going to lead the conversation further. Another one you might get is, Matt, I want to lose 10 pounds, but it's just not worth $1,000 over the next 3 months to me. So you need to do a temperature check. You need to ask them, okay, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it to you to lose those 10 pounds? It's like, it's just a 6. Well, yeah, obviously that's not worth $1,000 to you. Maybe this isn't the right fit. And if it is important to you, if it does become a 9 or a 10, get back in touch with me. But yeah, right now, if it's just a 6, you should probably go read a book on it and try a bit on your own before we end up working together. If it's just a 6, of course, $1,000 isn't valuable to you. I'm usually working with people who have struggled to lose weight on their own, and obviously you haven't struggled with that. I see it. And you can use this temperature check before you even get to the pitch. This temperature check is something you can do in the sales script around the point where you're asking them, when do you want to get the 6? You might ask it beforehand. If you feel like you haven't balanced those PB scales, if you feel like you haven't gotten to the pain, then you might just ask them straight up, explicitly, all right, Matt, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it for you to lose those 10 pounds? And if they tell you a 6, then you don't even have to bother going into the offer. You can see, okay, why is it a 6? You can dig a little deeper. This is something that you want to work through rather than handle. Now, another reason is I don't have the money right now. Good thing is, if you live in a first world country, you probably have access to credit. So again, this is where you want to go back to that temperature check. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it for you to lose those 10, 15 pounds? Okay, it sounds really important. No matter what you're going to be paying someone, I'm sitting here telling, do you think that I'm the right person for you? Really digging down to it. If people really want it, they'll find the money. But the PV scales have to be in balance. So here's some places that you can go to from that's too expensive. You can offer an investment plan. You might coach them into using credit, potentially, or you take a refundable deposit. So for an investment plan, if someone tells you it's 10 out of 10 important for them, and you just told them what you're paying full price is, then you might, if you're like, it's $1,000 for 3 months. All right, Matt, I'm hearing it's 10 out of 10 importance for you to lose that weight starting yesterday. And I'm 10 out of 10 committed to helping you make this change. Would it help if I had an investment plan for you? And then they might say yes. And then you can talk about it from there. Now, the other thing I like to do is to take a refundable deposit. This is a good one. So Matt, I'm hearing it's 10 out of 10 important for you to lose the weight starting yesterday. But you're telling me you need to review your finances. This is one that you're going to get from people where they might just be trying to get you off the call. So you need to make sure through the temperature check that they're actually looking to review their finances and make sure it's viable rather than they're just trying to get you off the call. So I hear you need to review your finances. This is why you put a refundable deposit.
All right, so the presentation cut off for the little internet issues, but let's get back into it. So as far as the refundable deposit goes, I know this is the first time that I'm bringing it up. And this is something that it's really important, just like everything else we talk about here in sales, it's really important that you are sold on the idea of the refundable deposit. Because if you come in and you make a soft request that, hey, okay, so what we can do is we can do a $500 refundable deposit. And then they say no. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. Well, we can just schedule in a follow-up call. That's you not being sold on your deposit. And the reason that they were saying no in the first place is because you're not sold on it and you're projecting that lack of belief onto them and they're reacting to that within your energy, not just the way that you're saying it. So first you have to be sold on it. The point of the refundable deposit on your end, really important to understand, is that this is how you are going to hold them accountable to showing up for a follow-up call. This is how you're going to really do another temperature check to see whether or not they're actually committed to joining your program or whether or not they're just saying, I need to check my finances or talk with my spouse to get you off the phone and then ghost you. So this is another temperature check. Whether or not you should even be following up with this person is predicated on the deposit, because if they come up with a excuse like, I just can't pay $500 without, consulting my spouse, you tell them, well, that's why it's refundable. If you show up to the call in 2 days and your spouse says that the program's too expensive, or you've checked your finances and you just can't afford it, or if something else has come up, then I'm going to refund it. I'm not here to take your money and run off to a foreign country. I'm going to refund this deposit. I'm not going to put my reputation on the line over $500, or I'm not going to put my reputation on the line over $200, whatever your deposit is. And again, your deposit should be the amount that you're charging per month. It should be enough to just apply to the first month and have them get ready to get rolling. But the other important thing to realize here, as you see in the refundable deposit script, is that you are taking the pressure off that call. You're not saying that you're getting on this call so I can close you. You're saying we're getting on this call to make sure that it's right. So after you've looked at your finances, I'm sure you're going to have some other questions that pop up. So when we get on that other call, we'll go over anything that's come up. And if it sounds like it's still a good fit and this is still something that you told me you're 10 out of 10, if this is still a 10 out of 10, you've looked at your finances and you can make it work, then I'll apply that deposit to your first month. But if some things have come up and on that call we decide that it's just not the right fit or not the right time, then that deposit is immediately refunded. You don't even feel the pain of it. You don't have to say this, but they're not even going to feel the pain of it, because if they schedule that follow-up call for 2 days later and they do it with a credit card, they never actually had to pay that money. All right, so that is the refundable deposit. That's how we're dealing with that's too expensive, or I need to check my finances. Now, this runs pretty adjacent to I need to check my finances, is I need to talk with my spouse. Oftentimes this comes up because of the price. So if someone says, I need to talk with my spouse, this is something that you have to pre-handle. So, you have to handle it before the call even starts. This is one of the most common ones. This is one of the most common cop-outs. This is usually a way that people try to get you off the phone and ghost you. So what you're going to do in your application now is you're going to ask, can you make your own financial decisions without consulting anybody else? It's a yes or no question. If you're using Calendly, like I recommend, just set up a yes or no question. If somebody answers no, I can't make my own financial decisions, reach out before the call. See if their spouse or whoever they need to consult for a financial decision can get on the call as well. If that person can't get on the call, have them ask that person what they'd need to know in order to make a decision. That way they can come prepared with that person's questions and bring the answers back to that person, make it a little bit more seamless. Now, anybody who answers yes on the application, yes, I can make my own financial decisions without consulting anybody, and still brings up, I need to talk with my spouse. What do you mean? 4 most important words in sales. What do you mean? Because some people, they're just going to default to that again to get off the call. They're feeling like they just want to get off the call and take some time to think about it. You say, what do you mean? It might break them out of that pattern. Well, I just want to talk to my spouse about it. You're going to get a little bit more information and you can work through it. But you're not going to get that until you ask, what do you mean? So one of the things I think might come up when you say, what do you mean? I've seen this a fair amount, is they'll say, that's more than I was expecting to pay, so I need to run that amount by my spouse, because there's going to be a lot of people out there who have their pricing on their website and they're cheap. They're a low ticket coach. And so at that point, they were probably expecting to pay maybe $100 a month or something like that based off their reference point. So again, you want to do a temperature check if you haven't already. That on a scale from 1 to 10, how much do you want to, solve whatever their goal is? But yeah, in this situation, if they really do need to run it by their spouse, you might say, what do you mean again after the temperature check? Get the temperature check. If they're 10 out of 10 and they really do need to run it by their spouse, cool. Not here to break up any marriages. So definitely run this by your spouse. Sounds like it's important to you. Want to make sure you can get what you need. So then that's where you actually step into the role of coaching them through the conversation. So you might ask them, all right, let's role play. If I'm your spouse, what are you telling me? And then another great question that I put down here is, what if I say no? What if I say no? It brings up the possibility their spouse might say no. And that is going to get them to come up with some gold. Because if they really want to do this, if they've done a temperature check and they really want to do this, then that's going to get them really thinking, oh my gosh, if my spouse does say no, and this is something I want to do, how am I going to convince them? It's going to make them better at bringing that conversation to their spouse or the person they need a financial decision made with. Now, this is another one. I need time to think about it. Another objection. Of course, every objection we answer with, what do you mean? One of the ones that I've seen is people say, I just don't make decisions on the first call. And this is where I let them know I take these calls to help you make an empowered decision. And when you go off on your own, your mind is going to play some tricks to talk you out of it. You're just going to see the price tag. You're not going to see the value anymore. So you told me this is a 10 out of 10 important thing to get solved right now, and you wanted it solved yesterday. So what is it that you actually need to think about? Keep it lean in the ask. You might even just say, what is it that you actually need to think about? I'm here to answer those things for you. And again, let's see, going all the way back. We don't handle objections. We hear them and seek to understand them. What do you mean is going to help you understand? Another thing people are going to say is, I'm considering all my options. So maybe this is something where they heard the price and they saw other people's price and they're like, oh, well, so-and-so is charging 165 per month. You're charging 250 per month, 500 per month. Maybe I'm better off with them because then I can get 2 months or 3 months for the cost of yours. But here's the thing about that is, if somebody says, I'm considering all my options, this is a chance for you to demonstrate your leadership in the industry, not just on the conversation, just to demonstrate your leadership. And the way that I would handle this is, cool, I would do the same thing if I were in your position. I'd want to consider all my options. And then from there, this is where you demonstrate your leadership and the scarcity associated with what you have and completely phase shift. Because here they might be expecting you to start pushing and talking about how awesome you are and really trying to convince them, oh, well, you're considering all your options. All right, well, this is what makes me different. But no, the way that you would want to say this is just say, I only take on a limited number of clients, and I wouldn't want to work with someone if it's the wrong fit. So if you come back to me in 2 days, why should I decide to work with you? So you've taken leadership over the conversation, and you've demonstrated your leadership as a coach and in the industry. And you've also demonstrated the scarcity of your time. So this is a really powerful way to deal with anybody who's weighing up their options or doesn't want to make a decision on the first call because they want to do their research. Now, another one that's going to come up related to time is, I'm not sure if I'll have enough time to commit to making the changes. Again, we answer with, what do you mean? And one of the most common ones, especially I'm recording this in what we call in Australia the silly season, the Christmas and New Year's stretch. Most people are going to say, I'm really busy with work right now and I just have a trip coming up, and they're going to make all these excuses about why they don't have enough time. So you can just seek to understand. You can ask questions. How much time can you commit each week? And if they can commit enough time to make changes, then you just let them know. You should also ask them things like, is it uncommon to be busy with work? Or how much do you travel? Based off of exactly how they phrase that objection. Because if they're like, well, I'm always busy with work, you say, okay, well, if you're always busy with work, that's what a coach is for. If I teach you how to eat well when you're not busy at work and then you get busy at work, what's going to happen? Or how much do you travel? Oh, I travel all the time for work. Okay, well, if you travel all the time for work and I teach you how to eat when you're not traveling, then what's going to happen when you travel? And that really comes down to the next thing that I'm going to do is a tool, reframing, analogies, reflections. These all kind of are of the same vein, but I want to give you this bonus tool to reframe before we end today's training. The thing about a reframe is you're taking what they say, you're applying it to another situation where it sounds ridiculous, and then you let their mind do the heavy lifting for you. So if someone's going to ask you a question like, how long will it take until I lose the 20 pounds? Well, you don't want to get in a position where you tell them it's going to take 2 months, and then they hit 2 months and they're dissatisfied. And if they're saying, how long will it take until I lose 20 pounds? Weight Watchers is telling me that I can do it in like 3 weeks. Well, you're going to reframe it. just ask them something like, how long does it take to drive to New York? It might be like, or you can even say, how long does it take to get to New York? I'll be like, well, am I driving, flying, on a train? Where am I leaving from? Are you talking from my house, from your house? And that's the thing. How long will it take until I lose 20 pounds? Sounds as silly as how long does it take to get to New York? You just don't have all of the variables in front of you. So you can use that type of analogy, that type of reframe. And anytime you see these objections coming up, you should be recording your sales calls. And when you look back at them and you see these objections or you see these patterns come up, if you can come up with a reframe, if you can come up with a reflection, if you can come up with an analogy to handle it and let their mind do the heavy lifting, then you're going to be much more potent on your sales calls. So that's all we've got for today in terms of the objection training. Sorry about the training getting cut off earlier on the presentation, but I did stitch these together and we got through all the content we needed. So we'll chat soon.